And so I'm screen sharing. Let me do slideshow again from current slide.
Currently, we just see the Thai seal background.
Yes, from current slide. Okay, this should work. All right.
There we go.
Yeah. Now, what I was going to do is talk about this project, and I was going to hold up the images that we used were from these two books. Can you see them in the? I guess you can see them. And these are, this is full of images of Turkmen carpets. So what we were trying to do is build a robot that could recognize which tribe, because our Turkmen have a lot of tribes. Each tribe makes a slightly different pattern. So we're trying to build a robot that could recognize and classify all the carpets based on the motifs in the carpet, what tribe made it, So it was an interesting project. It was, I guess we could say, successful. I mean, we didn't do it very far. But anyway, there's an Ersari carpet, and our little robot recognized it as an Ersari carpet. Anyway, so that's one case where I was going to actually hold up the books, hold up something to show people. And here we are from the beginning. Okay, I guess I can stop sharing screens now, and I can leave it like that and stop the share. Okay, now I'm not sharing anymore. So very much appreciate, once again, your kind help and that of everybody at the National Museum of Oman in making this possible.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul, and it's a great, again, opportunity for all of us to learn from such a house of experience. I mean, for a person like you and the team there in Smithsonian. So it's a great opportunity for everyone, for us, for the rest of enterprises, corporates here in the country. So how we were going to run a great session tonight. But I have a question, Doctor. I believe you have around 92 slides. Are we going to finish it or
no, we're
in an
not.
hour or? No,
yeah, you have an hour, so I'll finish in an hour. I'm not expecting to get through all of them, but some of them are going to be just very quick, to show what a data center looks like, and then that's all. So yeah, we'll have to spend. But I do think this part about games and so on at the end, gaming and use on phone apps and so on, that might not end up happening, and so I may have to just skip through that at the end. So that's my plan. I actually put in a few slides and took out a few slides when I went over it again, and I'll send the very final one. But yeah, I thought also that there were too many slides, but also I wanted to put, we have a new website that just went live a few days ago, and I really kind of just confirmed that it's in Thailand. So I added a few images of that to show our partnerships with foreign museums and how we work with foreign museums, even sometimes showing our own collection. That's something I wanted to add because we might think about that, and I'll just say this now to you, I don't have to say it to everybody, but we might think about that with the National Museum there in Muscat, because we have some very interesting old collections from Oman. And you might think about doing the website there instead of here, even though it's our collections, but it's about Oman, and we could do it together. So there's a joint website, but published on your site rather than here. And we've done that before. So this is the example from Thailand, where Thailand is a monarchy also, and there's a Siam society is under royal patronage, so it's a royal society. And we published on their website our own collections from Thailand.
Well, it's always an opportunity, and always, it's good to share even collection, objects, artifacts, whatever. So maybe by the contact with the decision makers here at the National Museum, we can do that. I mean, it's win for everyone. For me, as an individual. Yeah.
They're just ideas to share.
It's a good opportunity. Yeah. Exchange ideas, and that's a good one. So as usual, I mean, Dr. Salam is just joining. So Dr. as usual, 5 minutes prior to the show. So I mean, 5 minutes to 8, we're going to let the people in.
Okay. Wonderful.
So within 5 minutes, we should be ready within 5 minutes. Salam, masal khair, good evening.
مساء النور. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening, Salama. Hello.
Good evening.
Sorry for being late.
No, this is not late. In fact, we're all early.
Yeah.
There's some water here.
That's what
Yeah, you-
happens when school starts. You have all these homeworks to help the kids with.
Now, there are some slides I mentioned earlier for the others, Salama. There are some slides that have a lot of text on them. They're really for the record, and I'm not going to spend any time on them. I'm just saying for your records, I've sent this, and there's all the more detailed information there. I thought that was a good way to handle it, but those take no time. I just click right through.
Okay.
So just to explain, because otherwise there are too many slides. I cannot possibly talk about them all.
Good. How about the transcript going on?
Oh yes, that's true. Did you put on the sound recording? And also let me ask at the same time in advance, Rob, can you, and maybe Saeed Hussein, he's not showed up yet. He'll be coming with the general public. Both of you could do some
But can everyone like enable the transcript, the live transcript?
It says live
I think
transcription
yes.
has been enabled. Yeah, so I think you just have to turn it on when the time comes. Well, probably it's already on. I think you're recording already now, so that's fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and of course, when you make the final version for dissemination, you take the recording, you cut all this off, the preliminary things that we're talking about now. Well, I mean, it's fine to leave it on, but probably just start with the beginning. You know, the title is Virtual Museums and Other Museum Uses of the Web. But you realize you cannot really talk about the uses of the web without putting something about how things get on the web. So it starts with forms of digitization, how you digitize things, and then also some of the forms of analysis that use computers. So it's really more like kind of information technology used to get to the websites as a final step. But then we have the second section on just specifically virtual exhibition and museum uses of the web. So I think you saw that already. There's kind of two parts you saw that in the slides. I did a few minor revisions, took out a few slides that were not really, like the description of ACE or the American School of Oriental Research. There were some examples that just repeat themselves. And I added a bit about machine learning. So I'll send you the final version as well.
Okay. All right.
When I went over carefully, I thought, and I reversed two of them because I thought one was better as an introductory slide and then the next one following from it. So I'll send you the final version. These things never finish, do they?
Yes, that's true.
It's been so good to hear the good news about, if we want to call it good news, it's the decline in the coronavirus in Oman.
Yes. We're celebrating 4 days without any deaths today.
Really wonderful news. We're not, I can tell you that for sure. But we hope for the best.
Yeah, that's confusing because I know, like in the US, the vaccinated people's percentage is very high.
That's true. Yes. But we maintain our vigilance, I have to say. I'm not really going to many meetings. Unfortunately, even with embassies and so on, sometimes they want to have meetings, but I ask if we could possibly speak by phone here still. maybe next year. And I'm so much looking forward to, inshallah, being able to visit Oman and having your staff visit us here. So I don't know when that's possible. We still are not open to visitors, and generally our offices and libraries and collections are still closed now. But I'm in my office. I'm actually speaking from my office, so I can get in. So,
so you're back to offices like normal, or?
Not at all like normal. No, we have to get special permission, and I can get in, but the people who work with me cannot, which is inconvenient. I mean, every little thing, you know, packing something and sending it or taking it to the mail, I do everything myself when I'm here. So, you know, it's very quiet, though. On the plus side, there's not much happening. Pluses and minuses. Dr. Pension, Rob, my colleague, he's with us now, and he's working every day, but he works from his home in Canada. So really, we have a very spread out group team right now. There's lots of places because everybody could go. And many people, because the childcare closes, the childcare which takes care of their children, as in Rob's case, they closed. And so people move away to go back to where they have family who can help them with their kids. So a lot of people are thinking maybe we should do more work like that in the future anyway. I mean, even after we don't have to, it's a good idea. So.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Paul, I'm sorry if I interrupt here.
No, that's okay.
I have to say something, and
sure.
We welcome everyone who's just joining us. We're going to start in 3 minutes, inshallah, the third webinar session of this program. So welcome you all here in this session. So within 3 minutes, Dr. Paul will start the presentation, and inshallah, we are promised to have a nice topic and a wonderful, inshallah, by Dr. Paul and his team, inshallah. Thank you.
Inshallah.
I see Ms. Munira Abalushi. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, good evening. I do have a question, matter of fact. When I joined, I saw that you have already started. Did we miss something?
Oh, no, we were just chatting, you know, before it's starting. So I think if this is recorded, then all that will be cut off. So you didn't miss anything at all. We're just hello and checking to make sure that the screen sharing is working properly and so on.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer.
We haven't actually started yet. Wait. I do want to introduce someone, though. It's Mr. Douglas Mudd. Doug Mudd, are you there? You could even turn on your video if you'd like and unmute yourself if you wish. Doug Mudd is the director and curator of the Money Museum in Colorado, and he will be speaking on October 6th. So he's joining us now. Doug, oh, well, maybe you're not prepared to turn on your video and so on now, but anyway, he's joined us. I see. At least I can see your name. So yeah. he will be the part of the not actively participating, but he will be here. And so he has just won an award actually for one of his websites. So I'm sure there will be some connection between his talk and this one today.
All right. You know, if you're just hearing us. We welcome him again and looking forward to the next month session when he's going to be with us. If I'm not mistaken. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we are going to start. We didn't start before, just for those who just joining us a few minutes ago. We didn't start, we just started at 8 o'clock here on One's time and at 12 p.m. In Washington, D.C. So ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. And we welcome you here and Dr. Paul and his team in the US. We welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining the third webinar session of this program. We actually finished 2 sessions, and this is the third one out of 6 webinar sessions. We're going to have it until the end of this year. So the first 2 sessions were about visitor service, greeting, and ticketing and crowd management. And the second one was about the history of representing cultures in a museum and culture centers with an introduction to Smithsonian. Here tonight, our third session is going to be about virtual exhibition and other museum uses the web by Dr. Paul. And actually this program derives from the cooperation between the National Museum and Smithsonian Institution. Smithsonian Institution is the world's largest museum and research complex and the United States outstanding culture center. We're talking about 19 museums there and a zoo and a lot of things. So it's a massive place there. This program actually is sponsored by the US Embassy in Muscat. So we express huge, thanks to them, to everyone in the embassy for their sponsorship, for their assistance here in having this program. This program actually will be on the 21st century curatorship for Omani museums, professionals, specialists, and students. And also in this program, we're going to elevate the museums industry and the knowledge of individuals and enterprises. So we hope we get the benefit of this program, inshallah. So this night topic or session will be presented by Dr. Paul Michael Taylor. He's a research anthropologist at Smithsonian Institution since 1981. And he's the curator for Asia, Europe, and the Middle East in the Smithsonian Anthropology Department. And he serves as a director of Smithsonian Asian Culture History Program. And the education background of Dr. Paul, he received his bachelor degree from the University of California at Los Angeles in 1975, and his PhD from Yale University in 1980, and both of them actually in anthropology. And Dr. Paul also, he's an author and an editor of various books, scholarly articles on the ethnography, ethnobiology, arts, and languages. Of course, we're going to share a link where you can view or download some of Dr. Paul's papers and works. In connect with tonight's session, Dr. Paul also curated 24 exhibitions, and 5 of them are virtual exhibitions. So it's linking with our topic tonight. And of course, he received countless awards and grants. This is about Dr. Paul, and we would like to remind you all to mute your mics. And at the end of this presentation, we're going to hear your comments, questions, and inquiries. And it's your questions are very welcome here to Dr. Paul and his team. So Dr. Paul, it's your time, and please, you have the mic.
Thank you so much to Mr. Isa Al-Radini and to the Learning Center staff and all the staff of the National Museum of the National Museum. And thank you also, I join in saying thank you to the US Embassy in Muscat. I do believe I'm sharing my screen now. I hope you can see this properly. And And
We
this
don't
is,
see it, Paul.
says you are screen sharing. Can you see now? I'll stop
I
again.
can't,
And,
Dr. Paul. Yeah.
okay, share screen, screen 1, and share. I think the screen sharing needs to be enabled, but it says that you are screen sharing. Can you see?
Yes, we can see now. Thank you.
Can you see the screen now? Virtual exhibition and other museum uses of the web. That's our title. So with that, let us move to the fact that this will be a two-part presentation on virtual exhibitions and online research publications, as well as on information technology and its applications to museums of the kind that's necessary to get to websites. So if the screen is working properly now, let us begin. First, let's look at the issue that we're sort of talking about in these museum-related websites, which is the collections that we have, and the collections of many different material types: texts, photographs, maps, audio, video, as well as the physical objects themselves in our collections. All of these have different types of digitization guidelines, and I have some reference material shown on this slide, and I will do that with several slides. I'll basically show some sources that you can look up later. Here is just actually right near me in my office here, an example of the equipment that we use. A simple digital camera, a sheet fed or a flatbed scanner, slide scanners, film scanners. These are the types of normal materials that we use for digitization of the kinds of collections and materials that we have. Each of them has various kinds of pluses and minuses, we can say. But this example is, it's a digital image that we took with our camera at the National Parliamentary Library in Tbilisi, Georgia. And we used this on the cover of our book about Turkmenistan. The one thing that we have to keep in mind is what's called optical density. Basically means the resolution, the higher or lower the resolution of each of the digital images that we're using. And of course, in one way, you can say it's best to have the highest possible resolution, but that also takes up a lot of space. It's hard to send these images and so on emails. So you basically can have a range of useful densities for a single image. This shows our scanner, which can be set to take various levels of resolution of a single print photo, for example, like the one that you see on the screen. And I have several slides like this, which I'm going to include. I am not planning to read them all, but the point is just to illustrate that there are different characteristics for the 3 levels of digital files that we encourage keeping for the collections that we're digitizing. And one, we'll call it the master image. A second is an access image. And the third is a thumbnail image. So I'll show this and the characteristics over and over again with different types of files. And without reading the whole thing here, the point is that the master image is taken at the highest possible resolution, a very large file size. It's used for creating very high quality print reproductions. And the access image is much smaller. You can look at it on an average monitor. It's compressed, so you can open it and close it quickly. And the smallest is the thumbnail image. I love these thumbnail images because when I'm actually writing a publication, for example, I only use the thumbnails. I stick them there and write the captions and all of that stuff, because otherwise the Word document for your publication becomes immense if you try to put any larger image. So we really like to have a thumbnail version of each of our images. That's the most I'm going to say for this one, but we'll use the similar slide for several others. take textual documents. There are lots of different kinds of textual documents. If you have just a single sheet, then the flatbed scanner is great. Bounded materials, you can use a book cradle, something that, that holds the book open that you can look at, and so on. And of course, when you have a really fragile manuscript, then you can't open it very far. And not only that, the pages are sort of bending. And there is software now that can digitally look at that and unbend those pages to make them flat. When I was preparing the website, which Mr. Isa Al-Radini mentioned, where you'll see some of my old publications, these ones from the 1980s, they were not digital at the time. And so I had to take a book and tear it apart and then have each page flat in order to really get the best scan. And that is okay for books that you have lots of copies. But of course, you don't want to do that with a rare item. Here again, master access thumbnail. And the three file types used, TIFF, JPEG, and then a much lower resolution JPEG for each. So these are the specs for these, which you can see at your leisure later. Now let's talk about another aspect of this. Is that, it's one thing to take an old text and put it up on the web, but just doing that is often not very helpful. You can't really use the search functions and all the capacity that you would get if you also had the characters recognized. For this, we use optical character recognition, or we use the old-fashioned method, which is sitting next to a piece of paper that you're transcribing and typing in slowly, one by one, each word. You have to type it from the one that you can't read. And JSTOR is a widely used database for scholarly articles. They get almost 100% accuracy when they scan images. But still, people, complain about particular things that JSTOR can't seem to get correctly. Foreign letters, very often, Turkish or Norwegian, and other issues. Here's two examples from my own experience. A letter from one of our major collectors, who I mentioned in a previous seminar, William Lewis Abbott. And then next to that is another letter from Abbott. The first one is a carbon copy, and the second one is a handwritten letter with an illustration. I will say that our experience trying to use OCR on even a pretty clear carbon copy, like the one on the left, is very poor. I have found that it is faster for us to simply sit there and type it over again than to try to do optical character recognition on this kind of letter. And because we get a result, but the result is so full of errors that we have to spend more time correcting it than if we just typed it from the beginning. And at the present time, letters like the one on the right are impossible still for machines to really read well. That capacity is getting better though. And over time, probably both of these will be able to be accurately transcribed by machines as fast as we can do it ourselves now, after learning how to read his handwriting. But at the present time, we do a lot of things by hand in the old archives, even still. So this is what we face with optical character recognition. Now, in those cases where we're dealing with old museum archives or old records that we want to put into our records or publish online, what can we do to increase the accuracy of our transcriptions? Here's one method that's called triple key. It's widely used, and it's used by companies that do this also. And some people send them to India or someplace, and they're done for you. Triple key means that you have 3 people typing, each independently typing the same document. And then the computer looks to see which ones are the same. So the assumption is if 3 people type the same thing, that must be the correct transcription. If there's a difference, then you have to go back and figure out which one is correct. So that's how you discover the transcription errors. Whereas if only one person typed it, there would always be some errors. So this is one method that is sort of partly by hand, human done, and partly by machine to compare the difference, to try to get an accurate transcription of old documents so that we can properly transcribe them and put them up in our websites and online publications. So that's about texts. Now, what about the next thing, which is photographs and maps and graphics? This is one of the maps from our website, which I'll show a few more examples of later when we get really into the websites. It's called AGT. It stands for Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. This is Azerbaijan here in Georgia and Turkey. And this is about the BTC and SCP pipelines carrying oil and gas from the Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean. And specifically, when you make a pipeline through such areas, you have to check to see if there are archaeological sites and excavate anything on the path so that it can be saved rather than destroyed when you build the pipeline. So this is on the archaeological sites. And so we have done a lot of use of photography and maps for this. You can follow the cursor, follow the site with the cursor, follow all along the length of the pipeline. And in a particular place, you can look to see what site is from there and what's the history of that site. Now, once again, and I won't dwell on this, take your time later if you want, and look at the different file formats for photographs, maps, and graphics. But the principle is the same as all our data that we're digitizing. You want a master copy that's the best you can get, an access copy that's more than adequate for most purposes, and certainly well adequate for putting up on the web. You don't need to put, in fact, nobody normally would ever put up the highest resolution on the web because there's a waste of time waiting for it to load up on your website. Thumbnail for very quick use. So the principle is the same in every case. Now, so that's for photographs and maps and so on. What about audio materials? Old LP records, for example. You have digital recordings that are being made digital. And here's again my same office, just where I am, just right over there in my office, with some other equipment. Here's a stereo player connected to the digitization device, which is underneath. And you see that it's turning the audio into a digital recording. There's also the recording device that we use now in the field, a simple handheld digital recorder. I would like to mention about LP records, these stereo records. In the past, it was considered that if they break, you can't really ever get the sound off them anymore. There is a new technique developed now in UC Berkeley in California that uses laser beams rather than other methods of actually playing the record to retrieve the sound on the long play stereo records. And amazingly, therefore, you can take a broken record that's all broken into pieces and put its component parts together digitally so that you can actually get the complete sound from a record that's truly broken in pieces. I mean, it's very, you wouldn't normally do that because most records have other copies somewhere, but that's now become possible. So there's really things that have become possible with digital modes of recording and playing sound that were not possible before. I put some guidelines here and some websites for those interested, and you can look at this later. But for video files as well as audio files, the principle is still going to be the same, that you want basically 3 versions: your master version, your access version, and your thumbnail version. And remember, if you're recording, you cannot make any other one from a thumbnail. You can always take a master recording and make an access version and a thumbnail version, but not the reverse. So if you have time and capacity and storage, you should always make the master version that you really don't ever plan to do anything with except store it. And then the access version is separate. Now, the master version is also for any of these things, the texts, videos, sound recordings. It is also a preservation device, because in the event that the originals are lost, the recordings, the objects, the texts, whatever, you can have backups in multiple sites. So there are organizations, and including the Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation of the US embassies, which fund specifically preservation. Digitization is a form of preservation. Here's one of the videos that sorry, this is the homepage or the page that explains one of the videos sections for a 1926 set of films that was made on the 1926 expedition to New Guinea. I discussed the website that I did about this exhibition in our previous seminar, and now I'm using this as an example of the video footage that's shown from this website. And next, so that is integrated into the website itself. So those are all some of the types of data that we find. Now let's look at applying these issues to our physical collections. We have storage rooms filled with collections of all types. These are just a few examples. We can record lots of information about them, and that also should be accessible if we're doing a website that allows us to go through our collections on the web rather than directly. There's no substitute for keeping the originals. We know that. The kinds of information change with every generation. You can get different new types of information from the same object. But the information that we get now, it's best if we could record it so that it becomes available and reduces access, reduces our need to go to the collections. Because each time we open up these things or move around these textiles, we're potentially causing some more damage. So these are different types of information about the collection. And when we go through photographing the collection, and I won't again bother with reading this in detail, but we have to remember we're always using we're always trying to create master copies from which we can make other copies that are more useful on a day-to-day basis. Now, within the Smithsonian, as was mentioned, we have 19 museums, National Zoo, and many other research centers. One of those is just not a museum by itself, but a support center in Suitland, Maryland. It's a large area where we keep our collections. And so that's a space where the collections are stored. And it's inconvenient to try to go frequently to see the actual original collection. So we try to put as much information as possible into our collection database so people can look through our collections entirely online. So this is just for the anthropology department, which has currently almost 5 million records. The software used for collections is not one that I would necessarily recommend outside of the English-speaking world, EMU. It's accessible to the public. But there are some types of information that are not accessible to the public because, you know, there's some types of information that are only for staff to see. You don't want people to know the addresses, the home addresses and so on of every donor necessarily, things like that. But there's a very major, frequently used public interface. So what types of information beyond the simplest ones can we add? And how can we use this data? Here on the right, you see one of the groups of museum staff from Azerbaijan and Georgia, who during our work with the Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey project came to visit us. And they're going to see some of our collections research using the CT scanner, a CT inside the human body, but you can see the insides of things just as you can with X-rays, but it allows you to make basically 3D models of the insides of collection objects as well, which has been very useful for many purposes. In that same CT scanner within the anthropology department, we often have other departments and other museums coming to use the CT scanner. This is one of the famous Stradivarius violins. The Museum of American History has a division of musical history. And this is one of their 18th century Stradivarius violins, extremely valuable musical instrument. And this was put through the CT scanner to try to do this non-destructive analysis and create a digital copy of the original object, showing what is the inside like and what is the thickness of every part of the wood used to make this musical instrument. It shows also the amount of air mass that's available inside the violin. All these things were part of the effort to try to understand what gives these very special musical instruments their unique qualities for the production of sound. I'm going to use another example, which is actually, this is in my home with one of my students, Evan Wainwright. And the reason we're doing this at home, during the recent pandemic, we all had to stay home for a long time, over a year. So instead of just doing nothing, well, we kept working every day. And one of the projects we worked on was to build, we can call it a robot. I mean, it just was inside our computers, the same computers we were using anyway. But this is an example of a machine learning project. The goal was to teach a machine to do something that we often have to do in museums. And this would be a wonderful project to try to do in a place like Oman as well. But the example that I used is from Turkmenistan. This is in my home in Arlington, Virginia. That thing in the background, by the way, is the shield used by the Korawai tribe of New Guinea. I was there in the 1990s and did a film with that tribe. They use it for fighting, but they also use it for dancing. But anyway, that's one I brought back. It's sitting there. But what we used for the project were these volumes by Jörg Roget, the German collector of Turkmen carpets. So it's a beautifully illustrated collection of Turkmen carpets. Now these textiles, like in many places, each locality or each tribal group makes textiles with unique patterns. So what Evan and I set out to do was to say, well, just as a little exercise we'll do at home, let's try to create a machine that could recognize and classify the carpets. So we put in as many examples of Turkmen carpets that are taken from these books. We just use these photographs. So the result is that the machine basically was given these examples and had to break down all the pixels and try to find the motifs and discover the patterns in these motifs. That's what the thing on the right is. It's looking at the various from top left to bottom right, all the various changes in the coloration to try to find and identify the patterns. The principle here is just this simple one. Here's a picture of our President Abraham Lincoln. This is a common figure used in a lot of textbooks. It's a black and white photograph of the president from a long time ago in the 19th century, famous picture. And so the computer is told to try to identify the face. They first break it down into shades of gray and black and white, and then number these, and then it develops a method of recording what the numbers are. And with enough of these, it can find patterns within the numbers. This is a simple explanation of the technique. It's basically the same technique that is being used for facial recognition technology to recognize people's faces. So we're applying that method to the study of the Turkmen carpets. And this was from July of 2020. So if you look at this screenshot, each row represents a photo, and this here refers to one of the carpets. And the question being asked is, of the two tribal groups, was this carpet made by the Ersari or another carpet with another tribe? It's called Teke. So, and that's after showing the machine a lot of these images and the information from the book about which tribe made it. So if just take this top row, for example, 1.00 on the right here. This one is 2.26669, etc., to the -9th. So what it's saying is that it has a 1.00 chance of being an Ersari carpet. The chances that this is a Teke carpet are about 2.27 times 10 to the -9, which is about, 0.0000027% probability that it's Teke, meaning it's almost zero probability. So that's the carpet that's in question. And we can say that this machine has correctly identified it as Ersari and not Teke. Big deal, you can say, so who cares? That would have been easy. Expert would have known that anyway. But this is basically just an exercise. It was a student exercise to try to apply machine learning and recognition technology to carpets that are traditional carpets. This could be used in many other areas. That's my main point. Now, for that, you need a lot of data. We're not really doing anything with that project. That was just a home project and an exercise. But for the large amounts of data from all the collections, these data is stored at two places. One is the data center out in the faraway part of Virginia. And I'll just show quickly some examples of what the place looks like. It's not very interesting, but it's a core part of this museum. We also stored data from other museums. And there's a second place, which I myself don't know where it is. It's, I guess we can say, a secret location. Data is very important to keep stored in a cautious way. I can say Washington, we always thought here we could be a target if there was a war or something like that, if there were atomic war or other kind. So a lot of things are stored outside of Washington and stored offsite. And that's our data is one of those. But it's a very uninteresting place. There's no tourists who go to see it anyway, but that's a big part of planning when you're planning a major digitization and collections initiative. Then we get to collections databases, and which is the source of building our websites. There are many kinds, and these all have sites that have been built up from them. Korea, this image from Turkey for our AGT site, our stone inscription from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which we used in our epigraphy website, and our Taiwanese deity figures. So if you have lots of different data from different places, one of the things that's most helpful spending time figuring out ahead of time, and it's an ongoing process, is how to standardize what's called metadata, meaning the data about the data. So the vocabulary that we use to classify all these carpets, textiles, ceramic, kind of thing. So you need that. You need keywords. You need clear guidelines. I won't dwell on this topic much. You can come back to these slides if anybody's interested to look through these, but they have some references. If you Google search Dublin core element types, you'll discover that this is an effort to discover or to standardize what's called a element types. That is, an organization in Dublin worked this out. What are we going to say are the minimum things that we need to record about each object, photo, video, anything? Those are the core element types, which are mandatory. And then in addition, you have, oh, sorry, how do I go backwards? Optional ones. If I can go back to that. I'm trying to go backward. There we are. These are some of the optional ones. Publisher. But for your own purposes, when you're developing your metadata and your standardization, you would want to develop your own requirements. What's the minimum number of types of information that ideally should be recorded versus optional extra types of information? And then those get put into different components of your database. To make such a database, there are lots of things available. And if I seem to be going quickly, it's because I'm just doing a survey, not really exploring in detail all these possibilities. Microsoft Access is one of the very most widely used forms of database. Here's an example about Japanese crafts, who made each one, the name of the personal location, the date and time, and so on, and picture of it. So that's all being recorded here. Now, that's an Access database. There's also from Artesia, another kind of digital asset management or DAMS system. And we refer to putting things in DAMS. That means putting things into the General Smithsonian Digital Storage System. And that's widely used here. We can search for things in our collections and so on that way. And that's also used, a database of this type is used for the search engines, which are available to the public as well as internally to search for information about our anthropology collections. Okay. There are also various other online and free sources. Omeka is used just by my office. I don't know if anybody else around the Smithsonian uses it, but we have used this sometimes for particular databases, and it has certain advantages that we like as well. Anyway, let us look at what we can do building up websites with lots of other kinds of information from all these sources. One is, it is a form of website, but it's a mixed or augmented reality applications. This is not a virtual website, a full virtual website, but it's augmented. So for example, this is a person who's downstairs in our hall of evolution looking at a skeleton, a fossil skeleton, I think. Or maybe it's recent, but anyway, it's a perciform fish is what it says. So you're looking at the skeleton, and then you can, with your tablet, go online and discover what the actual fish looked like and more information that came from the collection itself. By linking to our collection, you can find out a lot more information about something that's on exhibit in your museum. So that's one kind of use, which is really very dependent on having a physical exhibit or being in a place. And so these things are not in conflict. You know, some people imagine that why should we put a lot of effort into building the virtual museum of our museum when, you know, maybe people who will see it online, they don't need to come to the museum anymore, they don't pay admission fees anymore, and this is bad for us. That's not going to be the case. People worried about that, you know, when movies were invented and films, and people said, well, we don't want to make a film from this novel because then people won't read the novel. Well, guess what happened? People made films from the novels, and then the sales of the novel go up, they don't go down. And similarly, when people can plan out their visit first by seeing something online, that often makes them more anxious and more interested to go actually see the original at the museum. So that's why a lot of augmented reality applications take place. And these can be used in archaeology and in museum presentations, and also in geographical applications in museums. So I want to use this example. This is from the Museum of London, and they have these hybrid images of street scenes. So you take these old images. This one is the Gloucester Road Underground Station from 1868, and then they have it also side by side in a recent image. This one is All Hallows by the Tower. So what you can do is, when you're at this place, you can look at this on your phone, or you can see it entirely at the museum as it transforms from the old version to the new version of what that place in London looked like. You can actually go to the Tower Bridge, you know, sort of, this is not just virtually trip, but you can actually take a trip to the Tower Bridge and see an augmented reality of what the Tower Bridge looked like in the past as well as now. Here are some photos from Bow Lake and also in London from 1930. Of the museum in 2014. So people can use these when they're at this place on the street or when they're in a museum to see what it was like in the past. You can imagine at an archaeological site, you can also be standing there looking at ruins where you see almost nothing left, but then also see a virtual image. There, though, the virtual image would have to be entirely reconstructed. These are examples where they're using archival photographs. Okay, so speaking of augmented reality, this is a popular exhibit. Right now, it's actually in Washington, you know, next door to me over here. It's pronounced Van Gogh in Dutch. Van Gogh, we say in English, the Dutch painter. This is immersive in the sense that you go into a room and it's as if you're walking through Van Gogh's paintings. So this would have, it's not 100% virtual reality because the other people, you actually see them there and so on. It's socially distanced, as you can see, but it is augmented reality. Okay, here's another example of that. And as for taking all this data and presenting it online, you know, there's a fine line between these. I don't really try to distinguish them in detail. Digital archives that are on the web, websites that are really done primarily as exhibits or as digital online publications, but there are various forms of applications as well. This is the one that I talked about before, one of our websites that I'm very pleased with, by Aeroplane to Pygmyland. Since I talked about it before, I won't say much about it, other than this is the records of a 1926 joint Smithsonian and Dutch expedition to Western New Guinea. Then it was Dutch New Guinea, now it's part of Indonesia. And it allows you to explore the different versions of the journals of the people who were on that expedition. Also, you can look at different, look at different archival maps and so on. And I used a lot of examples. That's also the one where you see the video taken in 1926 and broken down by section. So you can look up things from any place along the route of the expedition. Similarly, just like you can look up along the route of the expedition to 1926 in New Guinea, you can look things up along the route of the pipelines in this site, Ancient Heritage in the BTC SCP Pipelines Corridor. This is what we call our AGT site. AGT This is the shorthand for Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey. Massive project carrying oil and gas from the Caspian to the Mediterranean. So wherever you have an oil pipeline and that you've looked for archaeological records underneath before you lay it down, you can do this kind of image. This shows the site as if you've just put the cursor here in Azerbaijan, and you have three choices here. One of them is, as you see, Sayamchai, Tovuzchai, which, if you go to the next slide, those are both Iron Age necropoli. Each necropolis is recorded in detail, and you can actually also not only get the description of it here and some of the major artifacts from each of those two sites, but you can also separately go and read all the original site reports as people were first digging up the sites. So there's a lot of different kinds of information and levels of information. A person, the general reader, would not go to the detail of looking up the original site reports. But if you're a scholar looking for real detailed information about, what is the relationship between something in this quadrant and the other one, you could go to the original reports. You see, there's the original set of site reports. And here you see the route of the pipeline, and you can click on the various examples like this one from Tovuzchai, and you would be able to either go to the report on Tovuzchai or look through a gallery of some of the major finds that were found at Tovuzchai. This, of course, is just the map showing the area we're talking about. This is what's shown. This area from the Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean was the route of the pipeline. This project was funded by BP, and it included the training program for museum staff of Azerbaijan and Georgia, which I showed you earlier when we had our guests from the museums of both countries visiting us here and looking at the CT scanner. Another case of Tovuzchai. I will just go through these quickly, and this also I'll go through quickly, but this just went up again. This is an original site from the year 2000, which we opened at a wonderful ceremony in Bangkok about our royal gifts from Thailand. But this shows how we sometimes partner with other museums overseas. And in this case, these are royal gifts from Thailand. I hope I said that correctly. They're opened in Bangkok. That's what I meant to say. There's royal gifts from Thailand that are in the Smithsonian collections. And these royal gifts are described in this website, and the various monarchs who gave gifts and under what occasions, and then the discussion that we've done this in English, but we also have another one in Thai. You see, this is this is the Thai version, and these pictures are constantly changing. There's a flash involved here, and also you can go to different galleries to talk about different subjects. And in each case, you can look up the individual gifts as well that are highlighted. So I wrote the text for this site based on an exhibition that a book that we published in 1997. And I think this is something we might, think about for the future. In a place like the National Museum there in Muscat, that we have access to private collections as well as our Smithsonian collection, that is the royal gifts from Oman. Of course, we could publish them here, but it might be an interesting idea to kind of work with overseas museums and publish them from their sites as well. So this site is not hosted by the Smithsonian now, it's hosted by the Siam Society under royal patronage in Thailand. These are some of the, I'm going to just go very quickly now because of time, but these are some of the sites that you can find with free available web technology. Also, I want to just give credit to the American Society for Oriental Research, the ASOR Cultural Heritage Initiatives, which is doing a great job of international collaboration and recording with State Department support and support from other donors. Heritage in Syria, Iraq, Libya, war-torn places basically. And here's part of their Syrian heritage site. Jared Kohler from our program is very active in that. This is another example from Los Angeles, where I grew up, in California, Historic Places LA. This is a software application based, it's web-based, but it allows you to record information and find information about historic sites all around Los Angeles, and classifies them and gives information about each one. This would be considered in Los Angeles a very historic site. As you can see, you know, you're not going to find 10th century BC sites in Los Angeles. You find stuff like this. And of course, from Oman, you would find far older and probably for many of us more interesting things. But this is considered a very interesting and beautiful old building in Los Angeles. The technology is what I'm referring to, though. You can do a lot of recording of historic sites, and that also is a means of preservation, as I mentioned, because some of these older buildings don't survive. This is free software which is available, open source data management for the heritage field. And I mention this because even people with private collections might want to find some kind of heritage field data management platform that would allow them to keep good records of their collections. And this shows some of the installation guides, documentation guides, and so on for arches. I mentioned the augmented reality, so I'm just quickly mentioning also some phone applications that you can do this on your phone. All of these can be on the phone. And finally, I wanted to mention some gaming engines and 3D applications that you can move things around and view different aspects of the objects that are in your collections by recording the information in 3D. That also allows for different kinds of measurements and particular views with, in some cases, minerals that, for example, glow in certain types of light, and also to amplify characteristics of the texture that you might not be able to see on this, in this case, the ceramic, where you can view them and where they're from in the text in the ceramic piece, and view them in much greater detail and examine them and move them around. So these are some examples that I wanted to illustrate also. Just quickly, these are some of the software types that are available and used for this kind of three-dimensional work. To use this with landforms, people often use drones, and that's increasingly a very efficient method of studying land use, landscapes, and archaeological sites. Here's an example. Again, Jared Kohler from our office has used these drones, and this is him actually using the drone in the Philippines. So here's one of the famous Ifugao rice terraces. These terraces are on the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here's Jared, and with his toy, we can say, one of his favorite toys, out in the Philippines, and he is using a drone to map these sites to try to study the history of these very well-developed landforms. He's part of the Ifugao Archaeological Project also, which has excavated several sites in different places. And he was doing that since before 2015. And this kind of software really allows for the opportunity to look at these landforms and move them around and zoom in detail, and also to describe them and to compare the types of historical information that you have from the different landforms. And that has been useful in trying to date them. Hapao is one of those rice terraces, very extensively. This is not a natural formation, of course. This is all carved in ancient times by the tribal people of the Ifugao tribe in the Philippines. So, so yeah, this is some of the software that I really am not going to be able to talk about in detail here, but just to illustrate, I think in conclusion, though, about that, some of the issues that I think your National Museum and the universities in Oman and so on would need to think about is the massive, massive amount of storage space. This is what they collected in 3 weeks of working with their drones and so on in the Philippines. The processing time needed, and that you really need a long-term data management plan if you get so much data. So, well, I guess that's one of the conclusions always in museum work, you know, about getting data and getting collections. You know, I think every time we clean the house as individuals, we know that collecting things is both a virtue and a vice. So we're the same way in museums, that we collect things, we collect data. We have to really make long-term data management plans and carefully think through the scope of our collections, how we're going to use them, how we can best use them and most efficiently use them. For that purpose, international collaboration is very, very helpful. So I do sincerely thank for this seminar series, once again, the US Embassy in Muscat. And let me also thank the team here at the Smithsonian. I should include Evan Wainwright, the young student who went on to law school now, but he was working with me last year on that robot, and is still an honorary part of our team. Robert Pension, Saeed Hussein, and Claire Eckert. Thanks so much for all of them. I want to invite people also to attend the next webinar by Mr. Douglas Mudd, the director of the Money Museum in Colorado, who just won a very prestigious award for a website that he made. I did not include anything about it because I think he's probably going to tell you about that. And so that will be the next webinar in this series. So for this series, once again, sincerely thank the Learning Center at the National Museum and all our hosts and Mr. Isa Al-Adini for introducing me. And I'm completely open for any questions that any of you may have. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul, for enriching our knowledge again and again, every time in the past 3 months. So it's an honor to have you with us. For the audience, if you have any questions, inquiries, and anything, you can just open your mics and or turn it on and do it orally. And open your camera, turn your camera, and just ask the question. You're very welcome. Anybody has a question, please? Just do it.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Paul for his presentation. We really enjoy the valuable information that he provided. Just I have one question regarding the project that he mentioned for the carbons and the system that he developed to check maybe the pattern of these carbons. And also, I think maybe there will be some issue with taking a photo of these carbons regarding the lightness. So maybe sometime the photo will be dark or light. And if you take a photo for the same carbon, maybe you'll get it with different colors or lightning, something like that. So how did you solve maybe this issue? Because if you are after that, try to compare these carbons, even if it is the same carbon, it will be maybe a little different because of the different colors and the lightning. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. This is an excellent question. basically, how do you make sure the data is as similar as possible and recorded as nearly as possible the same in order to compare them? Because you've got somebody, just like with a person, though, it's no worse for a person looking at images of the carpet in different light. The color can look slightly different. So two things you can do. First, first I should say that the carpets we were using, during the pandemic for this little exercise were already photographed by the collector and published by the collector. So we were just scanning images from the book, which he kindly gave us permission to use. So we didn't have that issue for our photography. When we are photographing our own textiles and carpets, it's true that you do have to be worried about having textiles exposed to high intensity lights. But it really, for just a few seconds that a light is on, it really doesn't really matter that much. What's the worst is when you have a textile on display for weeks at a time in high light. That is very bad for the textile. But we keep the lights off until just when we're about to take the photograph. We turn them on, get everything laid up properly first, and then turn them on, check quickly to see if it's okay, then take the photograph and turn them off immediately. When we're moving textiles in and out, we keep the lights low. And setting everything up, we keep the lights low. So that's how normal photography is done. And we often have to use a ladder, and for very large textiles, we mount the camera up high and photograph down on the floor after laying out something on the floor to be underneath the textile. So that's how we do the photographs, and we expose them to light. Excuse me. Ideally, the light would be as similar as possible. So that's one answer about the photography. The second answer is, what are we looking for? Primarily, we're looking for patterns more than colors. And so even if the color is slightly different, the pattern should still be visible. What the computer also is looking for is really patterns, even if the color background is slightly different. So that, I hope, answers your question. Thank you. A very good question.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Hope Mr. Hamad got the right answer for his question. We saw someone,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes,
Mohammed
thank you,
Khalil.
Dr. Aziz. And
You
thank
have
you,
the-
Dr.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello.
Salam, Mr.
First, thank
Mohammed.
you for the wonderful presentation. Really, it was great. As I'm architect, and mostly I am interested in documenting heritage building. So normally we use also laser scanner. But I noticed today you spoke about using of drone to take photography and maybe for landscape. But can we merge and use drones with laser scanner so we can take details of ornaments of high buildings and maybe not accessible areas of the building, or this is difficult for drones?
I have never tried that, sir. Actually, and I don't know if we have done that here. In principle, you can certainly mount any laser scanner or anything else on the drone. So in principle, it should be possible. That's certainly true. The whole point of the drones, though, really is you get overview of a very large area, and also you can take close-ups of places that are hard to get access to. So in principle, that's one of the two uses of the drones. But the other thing is, for ornamentation and high places, I know people who have worked on this. In cathedrals in Europe, because of a religious sensitivity, also in Thailand, in temples and religious Buddhist temples, same principle. Your sculptors and artists were getting their religious merit or their reward maybe in heaven or something from making very elaborate images that were basically not going to be able to be seen from down on the floor. So people have had to build scaffolding and so on to get really good photographs and document the insides of those. And I will say that's one of the very important uses of digital technology, that you can sort of create a virtual room and the viewer can move up to the top of the very high place, which you can see from there in a much better way the artwork that you cannot see from down below. So I think that, and actually I remember there's also, I have seen in Uzbekistan, some Islamic prayers in calligraphy that were so high in the dome structure that they could not be seen from down below. The implication is that this must be a kind of prayer that was put there by somebody, but not for people to see, only for, you know, to be a prayer to God himself. And so I don't know what the person was thinking, but the same principle, I think, involved, that you're trying to do some religious artwork in a place that's not for other people, it's for God, essentially. So that's, of course, one of the challenges for art historians later, is that you want to make that available for people to see, even if it was not originally intended for that purpose. And for that, people build scaffolding and use other methods to get up high. And then you can make a virtual version of the building, because you don't want to leave the scaffolding and other things there or obscuring people's view. So I think this is one of the big areas of productive use of digital technology, no matter how you actually obtain the images.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Paul, and thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for the question. How we enrich our knowledge together with inquire question. So for the rest of the audience, do you have any questions, any inquiries, Dr. Paul, before we end up this session?
May I mention, I have just, if I can send this now, I have just put into the chat the academia publication site. If anybody wants to download any of those publications that I did, including the early ones that I digitized. After all, I ripped the books apart at the binding and we scanned the individual pages to get the best scan. But anyway, yeah, there's the address, and there are about, well, there's over 100 papers there now and about 30 books. And so you might find something of interest. Our websites have had a lot of changes inside the Smithsonian, and some of the old, like flash technology and so on that we used has been discovered that people can send viruses through it and so on, so they have to constantly update them. So now I really appreciate the value of print publications that last, and you don't have to constantly change them. So I think increasingly our websites will have a print version as well.
Thank you, Dr. Paul, for sharing that. But it seems we coming to an end of this session. So we thank Dr. Paul. I mean, thank you so much for this session. And thank you to everyone in your team back there in the US and in Canada. And we thank the National Museum also for hosting this event, and especially the Learning Center. And express our thanks also to the US Embassy in Muscat for the sponsorship and effort to have this program here in Oman with us. So thank you so much for everyone. Thank you for those who attend the third webinar. We're looking forward to have you in the next one next month, inshallah. And yeah, thank you so much for attending, and good night all, and enjoy the rest of your day, Dr. Paul and Mr. Robert there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Be safe.